Thank you so much, Ru, and thank you for sharing with us all those information. And in this part of the talk, I will talk more about like how technology use can influence our brain function and our cognition. So I'm starting this talk like talking about how during those past decades, like digital technology has transformed our daily lives. And as we can like already see in our in a daily basis, like people at every age are now taking advantage of the vast amounts of available online information and communication platforms that connect us with others. And this technology actually help us to generate, store, and process an enormous amount of information and interact with people very fast and efficiently. And as most of the adults, they use internet daily, we have like an increasing interest on how these interactions in this online world could affect like our brain and our cognition and in an individual and also like in a society, because this is like just something that is happening. It's very new and it's happening very fast. Give you this overview about this topic and how our brains may be changed with internet. One thing that I would like to start talking about is that internet is like attracting so much attention, especially when it comes when it comes to brain sciences, because internet is a special kind of media. Because usually when we had like radio or even like television, usually what happens is like we receive the information and we process this information, and we don't have much opportunity to interact with the people that are generating the information. So it's more a one-way road, but internet is actually a two-way road. So when we interact with others, when we have internet, we have the opportunity to create content, but we also have the opportunity to consume this content and receive feedback about this content and give feedback about this content. So it's more interactive, an interactive thing. And then you're constantly being exposed to others' opinion in almost real time. So the way we are interacting now, it's a bit different from the way that we used to interact with others before internet. And that's why it's attracting so much attention by neuroscientists and psychologists and educators. So next. The studies that are being done about this topic and especially about how internet is changing our brain and our cognition have shown that actually the brain networks that are involved in social interactions offline, they are also activated when we use internet to interact with others. So I'm in this talk like to facilitate the knowledge that I'm bringing here. I am like dividing those brain areas in three main brain areas that are involved when we interact with others in the internet, especially in social media. So the first part of the first set of brain areas are like the blue brain areas that are represented here in the figure. And some studies have shown that when we use internet to interact with people, we are recruiting those blue brain areas that are similar brain areas that are recruited when we have to think about what people might think. So it's like the brain areas involved when we are interacting with someone, and then we have to infer of what this someone is thinking, and therefore we have this is like a very important social skill, so we can have successful social interaction. So the social skill we call like empathy, others call mentalizing, or they even like bring this like ability of inferring other thoughts in this big umbrella term that it's like the theory of mind skills. But both these three words actually, they kind of refer to similar constructs, which is like this ability that we have to think, okay, what this person is meaning, is this person liking what I'm talking about? Should I change the subject? Should I talk about something else? So this is something that we do all the time when we talk to others, but in internet, as we are having like those interactions, especially with people that we don't know, we have to do it in a more often way. And it was like already shown that people who have like a better engagement of those brain areas when like performing those kinds of thinking, they are also good in keeping like online social interactions. Next. So this is an example of this. What I am saying is this study that showed that people who had like a higher brain volume, like a higher area of brain in these areas associated with social skills, empathy, and memory, they also had like higher online sociality abilities, which was indexed by the number of Facebook friends by this study. Just remembering that this study was done in 2012. It was like when Facebook was one of the most popular online social networks. So the number of Facebook friends was a good index of someone being able to keep their online social networks active, and also like a good index of someone's influence in social media. So this study is just like highlighting how engaging those empathy related areas were also important when like keeping online social interactions. Next, please. Another set of areas that are also important when interacting with others online are the red brain areas that are assigned here in the figure. So that those red brain areas are important when we think about ourselves and about who we are. So this kind of phenomenon, this kind of construct we call like self-referential thought, or we can also call as self-image perception. So every time that we post something online, especially if it's something about ourselves, we have to engage in those self-referential thought, in a way that what we want to others know about us. To have this kind of to answer this kind of question, you have to have a good perception of who you are, and also like what others might like to know about you. So it's a kind of complex thing that we do, but actually, like, as people do it all the time, especially like the younger generations, they do it more often too. It's kind of natural, but it involves a lot of processing and brain-related processing to have this kind of self-image perception. Again, next, please. So an example about this kind of process was shown by this study that showed that when people shared more information about themselves in social media, they also had like those brain areas related to memory, like a working memory, which is like the memory that you have, a short-term memory that you have to have some short amounts of information in your brain, but also like they also had this activity in brain areas related to self-image perception. And so those brain areas related to memory and also to self-image perception, they were connected more with each other when people had this habit of sharing information about themselves on the internet, which shows that when someone is like used to do this kind of thing on the internet, they are also like they are also have to remember what they want to share about themselves, but they also have to know which kind of information about themselves might be relevant. So this study is just showing that this kind of thinking that we also do when we share something about our lives with others offline. This is also being recruited when we share something online with others. Next, please. And a third group of brain areas that are like massively involved when we use online, when you use internet in overall, and especially when you use computers, are the green brain areas that are brain areas that are included in what we call the reward processing network in our brain. So reward, like the word reward, it's mainly used, it's often used to consider something that can give us a positive subjective feeling, right? So if you have a relaxing day, you consider this as a reward. When neuroscientists and psychologists, they call something as a reward, we consider reward any event that can activate, actually like potentially activate those reward network brain areas. And then like those brain areas are they are potentially keeping us motivated to keep pursuing more of those rewarding stimuli. And then like this is what can give us this feeling of this willing of wanting more of those stimuli. So rewarding stimuli can be anything that would give us this feeling of like, okay, I want to have more of it, and like keep us motivated to have more of it. So it can be like, for instance, food. Like, so if you eat a good food, you want more of it, but it can also be social rewards. So for instance, if you receive a compliment, if you are doing good at your job, this kind of recognition can also be considered as a reward. When we are in social media, we have all those positive reinforcers being a rewarding stimuli for us. So some studies have shown that the likes, for instance, the likes that people receive either on Facebook or either on Instagram or other kinds of social media platforms, they are potentially rewarding, and they activate those areas, brain areas related to rewarding processing. And that's why people, they like so much in using online platforms. So for instance, next, please. There was this study showing that adolescents who use that were like performing this Instagram browsing simulation, they had higher brain-related activity in those areas related with rewarding processing when they were seeing their own photos with many likes in the simulated platforms compared to when they saw their photos with few likes, which means that the fact that they received this social reinforcement, even if it was by unknown people, this was potentially rewarding for them, and then this was potentially driving them to post more things about them online to receive more of those likes. Next, please. But internet can, we can use internet to interact with others, but this is not the only way we use internet and the only way we use electronic devices, right? Like internet can also be used as a repository of information, and also like can be a way for us to help us to remember about information and about what we might want to do in future, or about something that we might remember later. The way we deal with internet as this repository of information may there are some studies showing that this may actually change the way we process the information in our brain. So for instance, there is this study showing that when people use internet to perform a literature search and to look for something that the experimenters were telling them to do, the ones that use internet to find information, they were faster finding this information compared to the ones that used books, but they were worse at remembering it. So they were less accurate when remembering about the information they had to find. Next, please. And then when the researchers went to look at the brain activations when people had to remember about the information they had to find, the authors of this study shown that when people use internet to find this information, they also, those people had lower brain-related activity in areas that are responsible to process visual information, but also areas that are responsible to identify what this visual information is. But interestingly, these same people, they did not have any difference in brain-related activity when in brain areas that are responsible to process where a visual information or a visual stimulus is. So it means that someone can, the people who use internet compared to the ones that use books, they didn't have any like brain difference when processing, when talking about identifying the location of this specific information, but they had differences in the brain activation to process what that information is, possibly because they didn't have enough time to consolidate that information in the brain, because they were outsourcing this kind of task to the internet, since the internet is always there. So next, please. So internet in overall, it can help us to build what we call transactive memory. That is a concept that is related to what Ru was saying when she talked about like literacy, and when we use external tools to help us to perform some kinds of tasks, especially regarding like memory. So transactive memory is a way for us to outsource our memory load and also to prevent a cognitive overload, so we can accomplish our daily tasks more efficiently. And also internet, by like helping this process of outsourcing memory to others, internet, as it's also like there all the time, it also helps us to build a collective memory, since the information it's accessible for many people at the very same time. So internet can also help us to build the way we remember the information as a group. But the problem with like outsourcing our memory load and our cognitive load and like relying on the internet to build our collective memory is that not only is the information internet is accurate, since, as I said previously in the talk, you can interact with the way the information it's being formed in internet, right? Like someone can post, can create, for instance, a blog and then post their own thoughts there. So because of this more malleable way to build information on the internet, you have to be more cautious on where you find information on the internet. So that's why nowadays there is like this increasing concern on warning people about the danger, not dangers, but about the problems regarding like misinformation, because this can potentially it can potentially change the way we see something in a collective way, but also in an individual way. But when we use internet, we use a great variety of electronic devices, not only desktops or laptops, but also smartphones, tablets, and wearable devices. And because like these electronic technologies are with us virtually all the time, some studies are also interested in investigating the effects of the potential effects of these devices in our cognition and our brain. So for instance, next. There is this study showing that people with higher levels of mobile technology engagement, they also had higher levels of connection between brain areas that are also related to rewarding processing, and lower levels of connection between areas associated with inhibitory control. So inhibitory control is a phenomenon that it's a cognitive skill that you use when you have to inhibit something that is distracting you in order for you to pay attention to something that you have to pay attention either because you're interested in it or either because you have to perform a task. So an example of inhibitory control is that if you are watching this talk now and then you are willing to pay attention to what I'm saying, you have to inhibit the urge of verifying the notifications that you receive in your smartphone or like verifying your email, because then you want to consolidate the memory that you're acquiring now about this talk. So this kind of inhibition that you have to actively do, it is called inhibitory control. So what is this study is showing is that when someone is like highly engaging in technology, especially mobile technology in this case, you have this activation of those brain areas that I already talked about that are like makes us wanting more about that stimuli. So that's potentially why people mobile electronic devices are so popular, because like they also have this potential to trigger these kinds of brain areas related to rewarding and positive stimuli. And you also have this lower engagement you also have this lower ability of inhibitory control, and then that's probably why people are always engaging in smartphone or electronic devices use. Another potential, next please. Another set of studies investigating the use of electronic devices and the potential effects on our cognition are the ones investigating video games and the use of video games as influence our cognition. So the use of video games influence our cognition. It depends, the studies have shown that it will depend on how you use the video games and for how long you use them. So you can, the high usage of video games, it may have some detrimental effects if it becomes, if it resembles an addiction. So for instance, in this study, the researchers have shown that participants with high online video game addiction score, they also showed reduced brain volume, reduced brain area in an area brain area related to impulse control and decision making regulation. So those people were potentially more prone to engage in this video game activity because they didn't have this ability to regulate their impulse. Next, please. But it was also shown that video games can actually have good effects on our cognition. So this next study have shown that a video game based training with a commercial video game that was pretty popular at the 90s and 2000, which is Super Mario, it actually could increase the brain volume in areas that are very important for spatial navigation, strategic planning, or working memory and motor performance, and can also induce in behavior changes in spatial navigation strategy, which means that if you have a certain program trying to improve certain skills, it can the video game can actually help people to improve those skills, either like in the online game, but also that can be translated to the offline environment. This is true for in this study. This is interesting because they were showing for skills related to motor skills, but in the next study, next, please. In the next study, the researchers could show that those training, this game-based training, can also be used to improve cognitive skills, so mental skills. So this study, I like very much this study because they have shown that games-based training could improve the performance in a skill that our group is interested, which is like cognitive flexibility. So cognitive flexibility is a cognitive skill that enable us to switch between different concepts and to adapt our behavior to achieve goals in an overall changing environment. So cognitive flexibility is now being discussed to be a very important skill to learn how to learn. So it's a very important skill that people should aim to have to help in learning process. And what this study shows is that gaming, like a game environment, could enhance behavioral indexes of task in this cognitive flexibility task, which is like faster. The participants could perform the task faster, but they could also enhance neural indexes of better response selection. So they could decide which kind of responses they had in a more efficient way. And also like they could have a more efficient conflict monitoring. So in an overall, the game training in cognitive flexibility, they could have the participants, adopting the new task rule easier, and they could promote better cognitive skills in those participants. So in overall, next please. We could show all the studies that are out there, they could show that we use the similar brain resources when interact with each other in offline and online environments. And internet in overall can be a great tool to help us to store information, but we have to pay attention from where this information is coming from, since we may have this tendency to rely on external source of memory. Electronic media is why it's so popular because it potentially triggers our brain networks processing reward information. So we have to take advantage of this kind of thing to use electronic media in our favor. And because the use of technology in our daily lives can have positive impacts on our brain and cognition depending on how we use it. And especially in education, we can promote better educational approaches with the help with electronic devices. So this is the next part of our talk, that what Timothy is going to tell us more about how you can use technology to help education and also to help students to learn better.
Natasha, there's a question from Dai Huitan asking whether there are also findings on negative impact, for example, negative feelings from seeing more likes in other people's posts as compared to one's own, or an exaggerated perception of one's self-image.
Yes, actually, like this very same this social comparison process. Yes, there are like some studies discussing about this social comparison, and then like the participants having like those negative feelings. And also, like when you, even if in this study that I showed, I didn't show the whole study because it would take a lot of time, but they were showing that the adolescents, when they were engaging in some risky behaviors, the fact that they were like over evaluating their risky behaviors as being something good because they were receiving likes about it, this could impact their decisions and also having them to have, for instance, more prone to adopt addiction behaviors and etc., which means that they were like they were saying that internet may have this potential downside effect on like reinforcing a kind of behavior that can be potentially dangerous to the individual. But this reinforcement, when it comes from others, it may have this like side effect. So this is something that is being already discussed in literature, yes.